Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. In this video we are going to go on an in-depth tour of the brand new Chevrolet Suburban. It's not just any Suburban though, this one's a high country with almost every available option, and it has the new Duramax diesel. Now in this video we are not going to be driving the car at all. This is purely a tour of features, styling, some nifty things I'm sure you haven't seen in other reviews. And then on another video coming after this, we're going to actually do an in-depth driving analysis on this vehicle, going through the city, highway, and mountain driving characteristics of the new Burb. Let's get into it. This video will be broken into chapters, so if you're watching on YouTube and you want to see a certain section, you can just scroll right to that section and it will be highlighted. I'll also pin a comment with each individual section because these videos tend to get pretty long and pretty geeky. But we're going to start here with the exterior styling, and no bolder place than the front end. Now this particular Chevrolet, and all of them actually for the past 10-20 years, have been shared across three different cousins. You have the Chevy Suburban, you have the GMC Yukon XL, and you have the Cadillac Escalade ESV. In terms of levels of equipment between this and the GMC, it's almost identical. Very few differences between the trucks. However, when you jump to the Escalade, you get Super Cruise, you get different screens. It's very different in that particular vehicle. But here we're focusing on the Chevy Suburban High Country. Let's talk styling, and then I'm going to go through some specs for you. So up front, this one, High Country, has a specific grille with a little bit of a bronze coloring to it. The High Country is really meant to be like your Northern Colorado, Wyoming rancher spec, which is sort of where we live, and it fits in beautifully with our landscape around here. It has these custom specific to the trim, 22-inch wheels, which are just absolutely massive. Personally, it's not the wheel choice I would choose, but as I always say, I'm not really the styling guru. You have, of course, the orange indicator lights to comply with FMVSS, and then LED headlights here, which are really great. No fogs on this particular version, but you can see here, this is where you're going to plug in your actual engine heater if you select that as an option. Now this diesel engine, we'll get into in a little bit, can actually do an unassisted cold start to minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit, which is minus 30 Celsius. That's pretty impressive. Let's come around the side. Well, first off, you can see the High Country denotion here, beautiful. I would like to think Rocky Mountains here on the side, really, really nice. And then you get these running boards down the side. These running boards kind of look like an AutoZone LED strip that is stuck on. It doesn't look premium walking up to it, the underlighting, but at least in the daytime, when you open the door, you can see they fold down very nicely, and you can use these. Of course, they're super rock solid. You can pretty much jump on them, and they can certainly take the weight. And then, of course, they will fold back up and in. Now, I've left the truck pretty dirty because I've been driving it around this week, and I think it looks better dirty. That's why we didn't clean it. Let's come back this way. The Suburban's significantly longer than Tahoe, of course, so you get all of this extra space, and I'll show you the trunk space here in a minute. This is the fuel filler cap, this one being a diesel, of course. You have a capless diesel system. You have your DEF fluid there. We'll get into that in a little bit. It's pretty interesting. Come around the back, and this is where I have to say I'm most disappointed with Suburban. Personally, I'm not a fan of the new taillights. I think like a Suburban generation from like 2007 to 2010 had the best looking back end. This looks almost a little bit soft to me, these sort of clear giant taillight housings, but the lights are significantly farther in. Just doesn't do it for me. Now this one does have an automatic rear tailgate opening, and at nighttime you get a Chevy logo that's projected on the bottom right here on the ground. And as you're walking up to the vehicle, when you're within 6 feet of the vehicle, it will project the light. You can walk up, you can basically break the light stream, kick underneath, and then it will open the trunk. I know where the sensor is, so I was able to do it in the daytime, of course, as would you if you were to own one. Come take a look at the trunk space here. Really nice low floor leveling here. You can also lower the vehicle down. Now, the best part about Suburban really is just the space behind the third row. I mean, look, you can put 6-7 people in this thing and then still have tons of room behind here. Let's go on the underfloor storage. So pretty good, actually. This one has the engine block heater cable right there, which actually I kind of want to try out. That'd be kind of neat. But pretty good underfloor storage. With the seats down, take a look at this. You get 23 cubic feet more space over the previous generation Suburban with everything down. You also get 2.2 inches more legroom in the second row, and the second row actually slides. I'll show you that in a minute. And also another couple inches for the third row, and everything's just bigger and better here. So these controls right here will lower the second row, for example. You can see that just slides and goes completely flat. And then these buttons right here will control the third row. So I can put that flat. I can lower this second row seat as well. There it goes, and you just have tons and tons of room. Now the third row is actually electronically controlled, so I can click the buttons here on the side and just pull them up as well, which is a really nice function. Especially the second row is not automatic up, but the third row is especially hard because you kind of have to squeeze in there and then pull them up. It's just so nice to have the automatic function. I really like that. Of course, you get an automatic closing tailgate as well. Now this particular Suburban has the max trailer towing package, but I find this interesting. The Duramax diesel is going to be the best towing vehicle because of the engine. However, it's not the max towing capacity you can tow with the Suburban. You need the 5.3, the baby V8 for that. We'll get into that in a little bit, but it has to do with GVWR and the weight of the diesel. But if you're going to tow, just get the diesel. It's pretty great. Let's talk about the second row space. So we're pretty much finished up with the exterior now, and now it's time to go inside. Of course, the second row slides forward and back 5 inches, which is a first for a Suburban. So this row, this passenger seat is really far back. You can see super reclined, but look, I fit perfectly fine. I have my own center armrest as well, which is awesome, and great headroom. Of course, again, I can slide forward and back. I can even recline all the way, which is awesome. Really comfortable second row. We'll get into the screens and infotainment later on, but I do want to show you some of these door pockets. So come around here, and you can see here you have a top level door tray, and then you have a bottom level door tray, which is super, super nice. Also a little extra storage here for where the grab handle is. So you're gonna be pulling all the Starburst wrappers out from the door trays, but really comfortable and usable space here. One thing I do want to mention is this vehicle does have keyless remote entry exit, so I can click this button. You can see the mirrors automatically fold, the running boards come in. As soon as I click it again, it will then unlock, pull the door, running boards come out. The front seats, let me jump in the passenger seat here really quick. Tons and tons of room, super comfortable. However, we're gonna get into pricing in just a second, but this car doesn't have massaging seats, which I think is a real shame because you know, this is a long distance road tripper, and this is kind of the vehicle you want to put massaging seats into. Again, similar here on the front door, come around and take a look. You can see as the back door, you have top level and bottom level storage compartments as well, which is super nice. Let's get into some specs, pricing, and how this is all laid out. So Suburban, let me just pull up my notes so I don't give you false information. Suburban starts at $51,700. That's for a base LS with the 5.3 liter V8 in two-wheel drive trim. The High Country starts at $75,300. So that's what this trim is. It's really, you know, it goes LS, LT, RST. I think there's 6 trims in total right now. And this is the max. The High Country has everything. And then this particular one is as tested at $82,495. It has the rear seat entertainment. It has the max trailer tow package. It has the High Country crazy neat package with all the extra stuff that's called the deluxe package. I love that. And then it also has, of course, the diesel, which is only a $1,500 option. So let's talk about this 3-liter diesel. I'm going to pop the hood really quick. Under the hood, we have the LM2 inline 6-cylinder diesel. Now, it'd be really cool to have the 6.6 liter V8 diesel in this truck, but honestly, this is a great engine pairing. Now, we're not talking about driving dynamics here, but I do want to tell you a little bit about this diesel. I'm also going to have another video that goes super in depth on this diesel with a GM engineer, a recorded interview, so keep your eye out for that. But here are the specs right off the bat. 277 horsepower, which doesn't sound like much, doesn't really matter in a diesel. That's made all the way up at 3,750 RPM. The Max engine speed's 5,100, so you do have some room above that 3,750, but this will upshift around 4,000 RPM at wide open throttle. Peak torque, which is what matters, is 460 pound-feet of torque. This is made from 1,500 all the way to 3,000 RPM. This is where the truck operates 99% of its life. However, for launching off the line, or if you're really down low and you just need some grunt at 1,250 RPM, it can still make 95% of peak torque. So really great wide power band, which is unique for a diesel. Again, we're gonna go into the in-depth characteristics, how it's an aluminum block, it has iron piston sleeves, has a water to air cooler system. Basically, this whole engine's about reducing the amount of airflow from the intake to the turbocharger to the combustion chamber, and this is all because there's no intercooler on the front of this truck. It's water to air, really good active thermal management. It basically can just stay wide open throttle for as long as you want, which I find really neat. Again, unassisted cold start, which means you can get in, start this thing up, glow plugs run for a couple seconds, and up to minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 40 Fahrenheit or Celsius it can do with the power plugged in, with the heater plugged in. Really, really awesome. It's paired with the 10L80 10-speed automatic transmission. And again, we'll go into this in our driving review, but a fantastic engine powertrain combination. If I was in between the 5.3 liter V8, the 6.2 liter V8, or this 3 liter inline diesel, 100% I'd go for the diesel, even just for daily driving and highway cruising. For highway cruising, the fuel economy is truly impressive. Again, I've done another test that will go live after this video, and you should just see how well this thing performs on the highway in terms of fuel economy. Truly, truly impressive. So I think that's a pretty neat tour of the Suburban on the outside and some drivetrain characteristics. Let's jump inside, go through some infotainment, go through the seating, and then we'll call it a video. Getting into the third row is always a challenge in a Suburban, so there's a couple different things we can do here. The first is this seat is available to be slid back in front by 5 inches, which is pretty neat. The second way we can do this is by pulling the seat down flat. You can see it even lowers down to make a full third row, and then I can pull a second time, I think, there we go. Hold on, come on, there we go. You gotta pull it real hard. Or I guess you could also use this. It also pulls the same trigger, and then it goes up forwards. However, this is not the way you're going to be getting into the third row for the most part. You'll probably never even use those features in day-to-day. There's a little button here on the inside of the C-pillar where I can click this and the seat goes down automatically and I don't even have to do anything. And I can just crawl right back into the third row. If I want even more ease, I can pull the seat up with that little latch. And here I go, into the third row. Headrests can go up as well, which is really nice. Once seated in the third row, you have quite a bit of room, good elbow space, even USB-C ports on either side, which is awesome, and 2 cup holders per side. Now, you can be cool in third row like I used to do as a kid. Sit back here, lounge out with the front seats down. Or if you really want to put people in it, you can pull these seats down, you pull them up, and you can see, hopefully you can see, I have at least 4 inches of knee room, and again, I'm 6'1", so a full-size adult can sit here, a full-size adult can sit in the seat in front of me, and that is the best part about the Suburban. Really neat just how much space you have. This one is a 3-row across in the third row, 2 in the middle, 2 in the front, all together, obviously 7 seats. Air vents in the roof as well. One thing GM always does well in almost every car is they have fantastic air conditioning, some of the best, and here is no exception. We have vents coming out the side. On the right, we have the air vents in the roof throughout the entire vehicle. Really awesome. Now, the seats in the second row have screens on them. We'll get into those in a little bit. But the good news is, rather than having these center-mounted screens, you keep your headroom here in the center, but you also can see the screens on either side from the third row, which is really great. So, yeah, great place to be in the third row. Again, 6'1", my size. I have no problem sitting back here. Sitting here in the second row now, just tons of room. Fairly okay headroom. This sunroof does seem to cut in a little bit. I'll have to look up the specs to see if the sunroof takes away headroom, but my guess is it does ever so slightly. Again, 6'1", I'm sitting here just fine. I can always, again, recline the seat. Now I have all the headroom in the world. Really neat screens back here. Of course, I have my own climate control for the second and third row. I can adjust fan speed, temperature, and second row heated seats. Of course, this one being a high country, you would expect that. So I think in terms of space, we knew it was going to be good, and it is good. So let's get into the rear infotainment system, and then we'll talk about all the settings and buttons up front. Sitting here in the second row, you get these awesome optional screens. You know, a lot of car makers are choosing to not put these in cars anymore because iPads and iPhones are just as easy. Instead, they'll give you a little mount that you can include inside the screen here, which is, or I should say, to put your iPad into a mount here, which I think is a good idea. But Chevrolet chose to make this an optional extra, and there's 3 things you can do. You can actually wirelessly cast your device here with something called Mirror Cast, which is kind of neat. And Apple devices do not support it, and only some Android devices do. But take a look down here where we have 2 HDMI ports, which is really neat. So we can plug in a PlayStation, Xbox, whatever it is, and then we have a 120 volt household outlet right here in the center. Now, an interesting note about this outlet, if you want an uninterruptible power supply, you cannot use the auto start stop feature. You need to physically disconnect that in order to plug in a power supply, because every time the vehicle does a restart cycle, it will shut off the power to that supply for about 1 second or so, maybe less than 1 second. So yep, just don't use auto start stop if the kids are playing games in the back. But we can go through 3 different things here. Of course, we can watch through the inputs. We can listen to USB music, or we can even choose different types of music from back here, which is really nice with these inputs. And then we get, I think, arguably the coolest feature, which is we have a full navigation system here, which is super nice. So let's say we want to go for food. I'm hungry and I feel like annoying my parents. I can go here and we'll go to fast food, for example, and let's say we want, I don't know, McDonald's, right? So we click on the McDonald's, it knows exactly where it is, it knows our position. It's almost as if you were doing the navigation up front. I can send the request to the front screen, take a look. There's the McDonald's popping up. It says request received from rear seat. You can ignore it or accept it. If you don't do anything, it will time out after a little while. So that is pretty neat for sure. Before we jump in, let's go through some of the controls on the Suburban. And we'll start here with the door. Of course, you get the double stack pockets that I've used for Starbucks straw wrappers for now, but you also get your standard stuff, your mirrors, your windows, your memory seats, and then also a mirror folding function, things like this. But this is where we get into the nitty gritty. And this one's a high country, so it has everything selected here, which is pretty neat. Well, this one has an electronic parking brake. I don't know if you heard it clamp down, but when you select this, it will clamp down the parking brake on the rear. This next button over will be our lane assistance. So if you touch the lines, it'll push you back in. We'll talk about that in our driving review, of course. We have our parking sensors on and off. We have our your StabiliTrak. So basically you push this once, it turns off traction control. If you're stopped and you push and hold it for like 3 to 5 seconds, it will then disable all stability control. You have your hill descent control, which limits your speed on downhill slopes using ABS braking. Then you have your automatic start stop function, which I said you'd have to disable in order to use the screens, of course. And then you have your power outlet on and off, that 120 volt functionality. You can turn off the whole circuit there. Then we get to some driving settings. So we have 4 different drivetrain configurations. We can go two-wheel drive with high range, 4-wheel drive with the high range. We can also put the vehicle into low range, which is good for really steep crawling situations where you really need that diesel torque paired with a much lower gearing ratio. It's pretty good for sure. And then you have an automatic setting, which does a good job distributing power between the rear and the front, sort of like an all-wheel drive system, but it does not lock it in 4 high. Then we get different driving modes. We have normal, sport, off-road, and then tow and haul. You can cycle through these. The vehicle will respond differently in each mode. We'll talk about it during our driving review, of course, but for example, in tow haul activates an automatic exhaust brake function here with the Duramax. So if you're going down steep hills, it'll drop the revs, run the exhaust brake, and really hold everything back, which is super neat. You'll also have a warning if your brakes get hot. It will say, hey, your brakes are hot, and either cool them down or drive moderately. So it is monitoring your brake temperature for towing, which is really fantastic. And this one has 4 different levels of suspension height that are user selectable. You have entry exit, which is in right now. The next step up is your normal ride height. Then you go up 1 inch to high ground clearance, and then you can go another inch higher for off-road. But this is only selectable in 4-wheel drive low. Now, the middle ride height, I should say the high setting, which is the 1 inch higher than normal, is only available up to 50 miles per hour, and then it'll drop down to a normal ride height. If you go above 65 miles per hour, the vehicle will lower 3/4 of an inch for better fuel economy. So that's these buttons here. Then you get your headlight controls, your backlight for the dash, and then this one has an integrated trailer brake controller, which is awesome. You can adjust your trailer brake gain, things like this. You also have your heads-up display. There's 4 different screens you can scroll through, from driver assistance to having your speed info to navigation. Really neat. And then of course you have your brightness controls there as well. So that's all the controls here on the left side. Pretty amazing what it can do. Of course, your basic seat controls here on the side of the seat, but no massaging function, as I mentioned. All right, hopping in the Suburban, we can go on, push to start, which is awesome. And it just starts right up. Once everything's warm, it won't run the glow plugs. Again, the glow plugs barely run. Let's turn down the air conditioning fan for noise, but man, the AC is really good in this thing, have to say. So starting with some controls up here, we have so much to talk about. We have our home link, we have the automatic lights off for when the doors open. I can raise and lower the 3rd row seats from here, which is awesome. I can also, let's see what else I can do. There's so much. I can open the sunroof shade, which goes all the way above the head of the 2nd row passenger. We're just going to close that for lighting though. Really awesome big sunroof in this thing. You can tilt it or slide the glass portion back to about here, just behind the driver's head is how far it goes back. Then I can choose how far I want my automatic tailgate to open up. There's 2 different ways to open the tailgate. I don't think I showed this, but all Suburbans have done it forever. You can open the full tailgate, or you can just open the glass top portion. This just controls the automatic tailgate. You can push it here and then the trunk will open up all the way, which is pretty great. Gotta say, love this feature. Up here, there's another switch which activates my favorite feature, which has to do with this center console. I can push the rearward button and you can see the center console automatically slides 10 inches back with electric motors. It is so neat. This does a couple things. First off, it brings the cup holders closer to the 2nd row passengers where they have easier access to their drinks. What it doesn't do is it makes, removes my armrest. I have no place to put my elbow, so I can actually slide this top piece forwards. There's a little notch indentation which locks it in. I gain an extra storage cubby. I can put my elbow here, and now I've gained a storage compartment right here, basically 10 inches of space where you could put a purse, you could put whatever you want, really. And then there's a secret cubby on this side where you can store whatever you want. You can put things in there, then you can slide this back, and you can even password lock this to valet mode so no one can actually slide it when the vehicle's gone into valet mode. I think that's a fantastic idea, a really neat implementation, and the only other car I've been in that has a sliding center console like this is actually the Nissan Ariya, which isn't even on sale yet. So I find that to be incredibly interesting, of course. Then we get up to some of these controls here, and let me just move some reading material and cameras out of the way. But here we have our general use buttons for infotainment and AC. So let's run through these real quick. You have volume. While this is a touch screen, you can use this knob to control it manually. I guess if the touch screen fails or you just don't want to get fingerprints on it, you can use the dial, which is great. You have your track forward and back. You have your home button, which brings you home, and then you get your air conditioning controls. All is fairly normal. Dual zone here. You can also control the rear climate with a setting here, so I can adjust the temperature separately. I can also link the rear temperature to the driver setting, which is awesome. Heated seats in typical GM fashion. You can do just the back or your butt and back. And then of course this one has air conditioning, 3 levels on all 3. You can manually disable and turn on rear climate. And that's kind of it. There is a wireless phone charger, USB-C, USB-A, and a 12-volt outlet all up here. 2 pretty large cup holders up front as well. All pretty standard. So that's all the buttons. Of course, this one has OnStar and the SOS crash stuff. And then take a look at this rear view mirror up here. I can make this from a traditional mirror into a camera mirror, which doesn't work as well on this as it does in other vehicles I've tested with it. I think it's mounted in an odd spot where everything just seems so close. And yes, I've played around with the zoom to zoom it all the way out. So I find that pretty interesting for sure. The shifter is a point of notice. Like I said, I've been in and out of Suburbans my whole life, and you always have the big column shifter. Gone is the column shifter. You have a push for park, pull for reverse, push for neutral, pull for drive and then push for your gear limiter. This is not a manual gear selection. It just says, hey, don't go higher than 4th gear, or don't shift higher than 5th gear, for example, and it will hold at the red line of the gear that you've selected, which is quite nice. Steering column is tilt and telescopic, which is nice. Old Suburbans used to only go up and down, so real pleased to have that functionality here for sure. You have your driver assist functions on the left. It will do adaptive cruise control. It will not do lane centering, but it will do lane departure assist, so it'll push you back in if you hit the lines. You do have voice controls and then a ton of menus here to tell you oil life and all that good stuff. So we're gonna, like I said, there's a lot to talk about on this diesel engine separate from the Suburban, and that's gonna be a whole nother video, because there's stuff like diesel exhaust fluid, you know, for example, the car, if you drive 500 miles past when it's empty, it will start to limit your max speed. We're gonna get into all the nitty-gritty in another video, but this was just a neat little tour of the Suburban, and I'll leave you with another hidden compartment as the last thing to show, and that is this function right here. You can store things, and it goes pretty far back actually, just to put some trinkets, I guess. This screen, if you are interested on how this all works, it's honestly the same as the brand new Corvette we just reviewed. I have a whole in-depth video just how on this screen works. I'll link that in the description, of course. But yeah, pretty standard. I just use CarPlay once you get all the settings set up, but tons of cameras, great assist. You can pretty much conduct a movie with all of these cameras on this car, which is really fantastic. And yeah, just an easy car to live with every day. Everyone loves a Suburban, and I think it's definitely a vehicle to have if you have a lot of kids, dogs, or activity in your life. This kind of solves all of the problems.